When my daughter said, "We got married yesterday," I wasn't invited, but I was expected to keep paying. A father's story of betrayal, boundaries, and hard-won dignity. When I called my daughter Sarah to ask when her wedding would be, my son-in-law Marcus looked me straight in the eye with a chilling smile and said, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Special people. I, who for 3 years had paid their monthly rent of $500, bought every piece of furniture in their apartment, filled their refrigerator when they had nothing to eat, was not a special person. I stood there in the living room of my own house, holding the phone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my daughter avoid my gaze while Marcus made himself comfortable on the sofa I had bought for them. The charcoal gray suit I had picked out for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, along with the new shoes and the shattered dream of walking my only daughter down the aisle. I had spent $300 on that suit, imagining how proud I would look in Sarah's wedding photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every detail. I had set aside $1,500 as a wedding gift. I had called my brother Daniel in Seattle to share the good news. I had cleaned my house from top to bottom, thinking they might come celebrate with me after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in a single second with those 4 poisoned words, "Only special people." Sarah finally lifted her gaze and said in a rehearsed voice, "Dad, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But I knew it was a lie. I saw the photos on social media. I saw Marcus's parents proudly posing next to the bride and groom. I saw his siblings toasting with champagne. I saw Sarah's white dress, which I had helped finance with the $800 I'd given her last month for personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see. A call that changed everything. A week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Marcus called me with a completely different voice. He was no longer the confident man who had excluded me from their wedding. Now he sounded desperate, almost pleading. "David, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us, saying if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." His voice trembled slightly, as if the world were ending. I was silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to make that transfer. All the times I had canceled my own plans to ensure they had a roof over their heads. All the times I had eaten beans and rice so I could give them money for their desires. And now, after they had excluded me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened. "Marcus," I said with a calm that surprised even me, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, it wasn't me who was trembling, it was him. "David, I don't understand," he stammered. "We were always special to you. You're like a second father to me." Lies. All lies. Wrapped in that pleading voice he only used when he needed something. The same voice he'd used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, which I had helped finance without knowing I would never see the ceremony where they were exchanged. For so many years, I had this constant feeling of walking on eggshells, weighing every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to earn a crumb of affection from my own daughter. I was the perfect father, the accommodating father-in-law, the silent provider who never protested when they treated me as if I were invisible. But that phrase, "only special people," awakened something in me that had been dormant for far too long. I sat down that night and calculated exactly how much money I had spent on them in those 3 years. Monthly rent, $500 times 36 months equals $18,000. Food and supplies, $200 per month equals $7,200. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversary gifts, $3,000. Sarah's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never repaid, $2,500. Air conditioner repair in their apartment, $600. Living room furniture, $1,200. Total, $33,300. That was the exact sum of my generosity. $33,300 taken from my late wife's life insurance, from my pension, from the savings I had put aside penny by penny for decades of honest work. All that money thrown away to keep two capable adults comfortable who couldn't even pretend to respect me. That night after I hung up, I sat on my bed and cried. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger, of accumulated frustration, of years of silently endured humiliation. I cried for all the times they made me feel that my love was a burden, my presence a nuisance, my money the only thing I had to offer. I cried for the foolish father I had been, for the man who had lost himself trying to be indispensable to those who considered him dispensable. When I woke up the next morning, something inside me had changed. I stood and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes as always, the same gray hair, the same wrinkles that told stories of years of giving love without getting it back. But there was something else in my gaze, a hardness I didn't recognize, a determination that had been buried under years of compliance. I made coffee, as I had every morning for 40 years. But this time, I didn't check my phone anticipating a message from Sarah apologizing. For the first time in a long time, I was my own first concern of the day. I took out my checkbook and bank statements. I wanted to see in exact numbers the extent of my own foolishness. The phone rang, Sarah's name on the screen. Normally, my heart would have pounded as I rushed to answer. This time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it fell silent. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Marcus this time. I let it ring too. Then a text came from Sarah. Dad, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted the message without replying. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I walked into the bank where I had made so many automatic transfers. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, had processed every one of my transfers to Sarah and Marcus. He had watched my account drain month after month to fill theirs. Mr. Klein, I said, I need to cancel the automatic transfers I have programmed. He looked at me, surprised. For 3 years, these transfers had been as regular as sunrise. Are you sure, Mr. Chin? Did something happen? His concern was genuine, more genuine than any interest Sarah had shown in me in recent months. What happened, I replied, is that I finally opened my eyes. I want to cancel everything, and I also want information on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money. While Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone didn't stop ringing. Sarah, Marcus, Sarah again. It was as if they had developed radar to detect when their source of income was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. Mr. Chun, Mr. Klein said as he handed me the papers. I apologize for intruding, but in all these years, I've seen you be very generous with your family. I hope you're not being pressured to make these changes. His words touched me deeply. This man, who barely knew me beyond bank transactions, showed more genuine concern for my well-being than my own daughter. I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein. On the contrary, I've finally stopped pressuring myself. When I left the bank, I felt strangely light, as if I had left an enormous burden in that office. When I got home, I found 3 cars parked in front of my door. Sarah's, Marcus's, and one I didn't recognize. I could see movement inside my house through the windows. My blood ran cold. They had keys. I had given them keys because I trusted them. I took a deep breath before opening the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened the door to find a scene I will never forget. Sarah was pacing like a caged animal. Marcus sat on my sofa with his head in his hands. And an older man I didn't know was going through papers on my dining table. My papers. My personal documents. What is happening here? I asked in a voice that sounded louder than I expected. All 3 looked at me as if I were the intruder in my own house. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice desperate. David, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? I asked calmly. What situation? I'm doing perfectly fine. Sarah finally looked at me, her eyes filled with panic. Dad, we went to the bank and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein explained that you also blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you did that. Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s in a gray suit, approached me with an outstretched hand. Mr. Chun, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked to my dining table and collected all my documents that he had been reviewing without my permission. These are my private papers. You have no right to look at them without my consent. Dad, Sarah interjected with a condescending voice. We're worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First, you financially cut us off without explanation. Then you don't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help. Marcus tried to take my hand. David, honey, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness since Mom passed is affecting you more than you think. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal. The word confusion echoed in my head like an alarm bell. Now I understood why they had brought the lawyer. It wasn't about helping me. It was about declaring me mentally incompetent and taking control of my finances. The same woman who had told me they only invited special people to their wedding was now treating me like a senile old man. I am not confused, I said with a firmness that silenced everyone. I am clearer than I have been in years. And you are going to leave my house right now. Mr. Fisher interjected. Mr. Chun, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have a right to intervene if they believe your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They have documented several concerning behaviors. Concerning behaviors? The laugh that came from my throat was harsh, almost cruel. Like what? Deciding that my money belongs to me? Deciding to no longer finance the lives of two adults who treat me like trash? Marcus jumped up as if I'd slapped him. We never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding up the process. There was the naked truth. Everything I had would one day belong to them. In their minds, I was already dead, and they were just collecting their inheritance in advance. Out, I said, pointing to the door. All three of you, get out of my house. Sarah stood with that angry childlike face she made when she didn't get her way. Dad, we can't just leave. We have obligations. The rent, the car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off from one day to the next. I can't. My voice rose. Who says I can't? For years, I've paid rent that wasn't even in my name. I filled a refrigerator in a house where I wasn't welcome. I financed a life that clearly had no place for me. Mr. Fisher took a folder from his briefcase. Mr. Chun, we've prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Sarah and Marcus to manage your finances more efficiently, just temporarily until you feel better. I took the folder and, without even opening it, threw it directly into the trash. The only transition happening here is yours to the front door. Marcus started to cry, not tears of sadness, but tears of frustration and rage. You can't do this to us, David. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on financial obligations because we knew we could count on you. Obligations based on my money, I replied. Not on my well-being. Not on my happiness. Not on my company. Just on my money. And now that I've decided my money is better used in my own life, I'm suddenly a confused old man who needs legal guardianship. Sarah tried to approach me, but I stepped back. She was no longer the little girl who ran into my arms when she had nightmares. She was a 32-year-old woman who saw her father as an obstacle between herself and a comfortable life financed by others. Dad, we made mistakes, she said in a voice that was supposed to sound remorseful. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Marcus was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you just become reasonable again. Reasonable. The word tasted bitter. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treat me like a stranger. It means pretending it doesn't hurt to have been excluded from the most important day of my only daughter's life. Mr. Fisher packed his papers with practiced efficiency. Mr. Chun, this isn't over. Your family has legal options. If you are indeed making irrational decisions due to mental health problems, a judge can determine that you need guardianship. His words were a blow. This wasn't just a manipulative family visit. It was a real legal threat. Mr. Fisher, I said, looking him directly in the eyes, I suggest you do your research thoroughly before you threaten a 68-year-old man who has managed his finances flawlessly for 40 years, who raised his daughter alone after his wife died, who ran a household and worked honorably until retirement, and who until last week financially supported two completely capable adults. Marcus stopped crying and looked at me with coldness that finally showed his true face. This won't stay like this, David. We have rights. And lawyers too. Perfect, I replied. Hire all the lawyers you want. With your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums. The three of them walked to the door with the wounded dignity of people who aren't used to being told no. Before she left, Sarah turned to me one last time. Dad, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to end up alone with no one to take care of you when you really need it. Sarah, I said with deep sadness but crystalline clarity, I'm already alone. The difference is that now it's by my own choice, not by your neglect. As I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night, I couldn't sleep, not out of sadness or regret, but from the adrenaline of having reclaimed control of my own life. At 6 a.m., I was already dressed and on my way to attorney Mr. Weber's office, a man I'd met years ago when handling my wife's estate. Unlike Mr. Fisher, whom Sarah and Marcus had brought, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation specializing in protecting the rights of the elderly. Mr. Chun, he said after I explained the situation, what your children tried to do yesterday is more common than you think. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a federal crime. The fact that they entered your house without permission and reviewed your private documents also constitutes a violation. His words both calmed and worried me. They calmed me because they confirmed I wasn't crazy. What had happened was truly abusive. They worried me because I realized the situation was more serious than I'd thought. We have to document everything, Mr. Weber continued. Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We'll also change your will to protect your assets from future manipulation attempts. We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial records. Mr. Weber whistled when he saw the total. $33,300 in 3 years. Mr. Chun, with this money, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete plan. 1. Change all the locks on my house. 2. Install a security system with cameras. 3. Open a new bank account at a different bank. 4. Start living the life I'd postponed for years. A month later, I thought I had finally won the war. I'd settled into a beautiful routine, quiet breakfasts, tending my garden, having lunch with my neighbor Tom, painting in the afternoons. But on a Thursday morning, while I was painting, Mr. Weber came to my house with a grim expression. David, we need to talk. Sarah and Marcus have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They're requesting to have a legal guardian assigned to you. The words fell like stones. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines you're unable to manage your affairs, yes, he could place Sarah as your legal guardian, giving her full control over your finances. The betrayal cut deeper than anything before. My own daughter was trying to legally declare me incompetent to steal my money. The trial came 3 weeks later. I woke early, put on my best Navy suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with determination I'd never felt before. Mr. Weber arrived at 7 a.m. to review our strategy. David, remember the burden of proof is on them. They have to prove you're incompetent. We just have to show you're not. At the courthouse, I saw Sarah in a new black dress, Marcus in an expensive suit. Their lawyer was an older, elegant man with the confidence of someone who'd won similar cases before. His opening statement portrayed me as a confused old man manipulated by strangers to alienate me from my loving family. They called their witnesses. Marcus testified first, describing how I'd become erratic and irrational, how they believed I was being manipulated by people taking advantage of me. When Mr. Weber cross-examined him, the mask fell. Mr. Brooks, how much money have you received from your father-in-law in the last 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,300 sound about right? Silence. How many times have you visited Mr. Chun without asking him for money? More silence. Is it true you and your wife entered my client's house without permission and reviewed his private documents? We were worried about him. Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure him into signing a power of attorney? We wanted to help him manage his finances. Do you, at 35 years old, need the help of your 68-year-old father-in-law to pay your rent? Marcus couldn't answer with dignity. Sarah was next. Seeing her on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most painful moments of my life. My dad has always been very generous, she testified, tears streaming down her face. But lately, he's become hostile and paranoid. We just want to help him get the care he needs. Mr. Weber's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Brooks, when was the last time you called your father without asking for money? She stammered, unable to give a specific date. Is it true you got married without inviting your father? It was a very small ceremony. Is it true that when he asked about the wedding, you told him you'd only invited special people? Her face turned red. Those words were taken out of context. What would be the right context to tell your father he's not a special person? She couldn't answer convincingly. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber called witnesses, my pharmacist, Dr. Moore, my neighbor Tom. Finally, it was my turn. I stood with dignity and walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of 68 years of experience, of wisdom gained through pain, of strength discovered in adversity. Mr. Weber guided me through my testimony, the $33,300 spent over 3 years, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant manipulation, the violation of my privacy, the legal threats. Mr. Chun, he finally asked, why did you decide to stop financial support for your daughter and son-in-law? Because I finally understood, I replied clearly, that what I was getting from them was not love. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I as a person was not. Do you regret your decision? I only regret it took me so long to make it. Judge Miller retired to deliberate for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he returned, his expression was serious but clear. After reviewing all the evidence presented, it is obvious to this court that Mr. David Chun is in full possession of his mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm his cognitive competence. His financial decisions, as painful as they may be for his family, are completely rational and within his rights. My heart began to beat faster. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence suggests this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for Mr. Chin's well-being. The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I had won. I had not only won the lawsuit, but also my freedom, my dignity, my right to live free from the abuse of those who supposedly loved me. When we left the courthouse, I saw Sarah and Marcus talking angrily with their lawyer. Marcus gave me a look of pure hatred before walking away. Sarah looked at me one last time, and for a second, I saw something that could have been regret, but it was too late. That night, my neighbor Tom organized a small celebration. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to standing up for oneself. "David," he said, "today you didn't just win a trial. You won back your life." He was right. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful condo near the waterfront. I donated a portion of my savings to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the rest, I began living the life I'd always wanted. I traveled to Japan. I took art classes. I joined volunteer groups. I made new friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. I never heard from Sarah and Marcus again. I heard through others that they'd moved to a smaller apartment, that Marcus had finally found steady work, that Sarah had started a small business. Perhaps adversity taught them what my generosity never could: the value of honest work and independence. 6 months later, the unexpected letter. I was having breakfast on my balcony, watching sailboats drift across the harbor when the mail arrived. Among the usual bills and advertisements was a cream-colored envelope with handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Sarah's handwriting. My first instinct was to throw it away. 6 months of peace had taught me that sometimes the best response is no response. But something in me, perhaps the father who still lived beneath the scars, needed to know. I opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Dad, I've started this letter 100 times over the past 6 months. Each time, I couldn't find the right words. I'm not sure these are the right words either, but I can't stay silent anymore. I'm in therapy 3 times a week. Dr. Richardson asks me questions I can't answer. When did I stop seeing you as my father and start seeing you as a resource? When did I convince myself that your love was a guarantee, not a gift? When did I become the kind of person who could exclude her own father from her wedding? I don't have answers, but I'm trying to find them. Marcus and I separated 2 months ago. Before you think this is about money, it's not. It's about realizing that we built our entire relationship on a foundation of your generosity. When that was gone, we discovered we had nothing left. We didn't even like each other without you financing our illusions. I'm living in a studio apartment now. I work 2 jobs, one as a receptionist, one as a weekend barista. It's exhausting. It's humbling. It's the first time in my adult life I've truly supported myself. And Dad, I'm starting to understand what you tried to teach me my whole life. The value of hard work, the dignity of independence, the difference between needing someone and using them. I'm not writing to ask for money. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm writing because Dr. Richardson asked me, if your father died tomorrow, what would you wish you had said to him? And the answer broke me. I would want to tell you I'm sorry, that I see now what I couldn't see then, that the wedding dress you helped pay for feels like a costume from someone else's life, that every time I make my rent payment with money I earned, I think of you making those transfers for 3 years while I treated you like an inconvenience. I would want to tell you that I remember. I remember you teaching me to ride a bike, your hand steady on my back until I found my balance. I remember you sitting with me through every nightmare after Mom died. I remember you working double shifts so I could go to the college I wanted. I remember the father you were. And I'm ashamed of the daughter I became. I'm not asking you to respond to this letter. I'm not asking you to see me. I'm simply asking you to know that I'm finally becoming someone who understands what she lost, with more love than I ever showed you, Sarah. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, tears blurred different sentences. The father in me wanted to call her immediately. The wounded man I'd become wanted to burn the letter and protect the peace I'd fought so hard to build. I did neither. Instead, I sat with the letter for 3 days, letting the words settle into the spaces between hurt and hope. On the 4th day, I wrote back, 1 sentence on a postcard showing the harbor. Coffee. Saturday, 10 a.m. Harbor Cafe. Bring your own truth, I'll bring mine. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in fog. I got to the cafe early, claimed a corner table, ordered 2 coffees, 1 black for me, 1 with extra cream and 2 sugars, the way Sarah had taken it since she was 12. She arrived at 9:58, punctual in a way she'd never been before. She'd lost weight. Her clothes were simple jeans and a plain sweater, no designer labels. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, no expensive salon styling. She looked like the daughter I used to know before marriage, and Marcus and the illusion of easy money had changed her into someone I didn't recognize. "Dad," she said, her voice breaking on that single word. "Thank you for seeing me." I gestured to the chair. "Sit down before your coffee gets cold." She looked at the cup prepared exactly as she liked it, and tears started falling before she even sat down. "You remembered," she whispered. "I'm your father," I said simply. "I've always remembered." We sat in silence for a moment. She wrapped her hands around the cup as if drawing warmth from it, or courage. "I don't know where to start," she said finally. "Start with the truth," I replied. "That's all I ever wanted from you." She took a shaky breath. "The truth is, I don't recognize the person I was 6 months ago. When I look at the photos from the wedding, I didn't invite you till I see a stranger. A cruel, entitled stranger." "What changed?" I asked, my voice careful, neutral. "Everything fell apart," she said. "When you cut off the money, Marcus and I had to face reality. We were living in an apartment we couldn't afford, driving a car we couldn't maintain, eating out because neither of us knew how to cook. When the bills came due and you weren't there to catch us, we just collapsed." She wiped her eyes with a napkin. "We fought constantly. About money. About whose fault it was. About who should call you and beg. Marcus wanted me to show up at your door crying, to manipulate you the way I always had." And in that moment, hearing him say it out loud, I realized that's exactly what I'd been doing. Manipulating you. Using tears and guilt and the fact that I'm your daughter to extract money from you. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you deserve to hear it," she said. "Because I need to say it out loud. Because Dr. Richardson says healing starts with naming the harm we've caused." I took a sip of my coffee, buying time to process. "Tell me about therapy." "What did she tell you instead?" She asked me questions. Simple questions that destroyed me. "When was the last time you asked your father how he was doing?" I couldn't remember. "What's your father's favorite meal?" I didn't know. "What does your father do for fun?" I had no idea. I'd spent 3 years taking money from you, and I couldn't answer basic questions about who you are as a person. Sarah's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Then she asked the question that broke me. "If your father had no money, would you still want a relationship with him?" And Dad? I couldn't answer. I sat there for 10 minutes in silence because I honestly didn't know. I felt the words like a physical blow, but I kept my expression steady. "And now? Do you know the answer now?" "Yes," she said, meeting my eyes fully for the first time. "The answer is yes. Because these past 6 months without you, without your money, without your presence, I've realized I didn't lose a bank account. I lost my father. And that loss is so much bigger than any financial struggle." "What happened with Marcus?" She laughed bitterly. "He showed his true colors fast. When the money stopped, so did his charm. He blamed me for ruining our relationship with you. He said I should have managed you better. Those were his exact words, managed you. Like you were a resource to be handled, not a person." "When did you leave him?" "The day he suggested we contest the court ruling. He wanted to appeal, to find a new lawyer, to try again to have you declared incompetent. He was on the phone with an attorney, and I heard him say, 'The old man's got to be good for at least another 100 grand before he dies.' And something in me just snapped." Sarah's tears were flowing freely now. "I packed a bag while he was still on the phone. I didn't take anything we'd bought with your money. I just took my clothes and my laptop and I left. I've been in a studio apartment ever since, working 2 jobs, learning to live on my own budget." "How's that going?" I asked, genuinely curious. "It's hard," she admitted. "Really hard. I come home exhausted. I eat ramen more nights than I'd like to admit. I can't remember the last time I bought something new. But Dad, I'm proud of myself for the first time in years. I paid my own rent last month. All of it. With money I earned. And when I sent that payment, I thought of you doing that for us for 3 years, and I just sat on my bed and cried." "There's something else I need to tell you," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Something I've been too ashamed to admit." I waited, giving her space. "The wedding. It wasn't Marcus's idea to exclude you. It was mine. The admission hung in the air between us. Marcus's parents were paying for most of it, she continued. They said they'd only contribute if we kept it small, immediate family only. Marcus wanted to invite you anyway. He said we could scale something else back. But She couldn't finish the sentence. You what? I asked gently, though the truth was already forming in my mind. I was embarrassed, she whispered. Marcus's family is wealthy. His parents are both doctors. His sister is a lawyer. Their house is massive. And I thought if you came, they'd see us for what we really were. Two adults who couldn't support themselves. Two people living off your retirement money. I thought they'd judge me. So you uninvited your own father to impress your in-laws? Yes, she said, the word barely audible. And the worst part? They judged me anyway. Marcus's mother asked where my father was. When I said you weren't there, she looked at Marcus and said, "What kind of family are you marrying into?" I tried to laugh it off, said you were ill. But she knew I was lying. She gave me this look like I was trash. And I realized I'd thrown away my relationship with you to impress a woman who despised me anyway. I sat back in my chair, processing this new layer of betrayal. The wedding hadn't been a last-minute decision. It hadn't been Marcus's doing. My own daughter had calculated that I wasn't worth having around. Say something, Sarah pleaded. Yell at me. Tell me I'm terrible. Tell me you never want to see me again. Just say something. I'm not going to yell, I said quietly. I'm not going to tell you you're terrible, but I'm going to tell you the truth. That hurt more than anything else. Not the money, not even the exclusion itself, but knowing you chose to protect your image over your father. That's a wound that goes deep. I know, she sobbed. I know, and I can never take it back. I can never give you back that day. I can never give you back the photos we never took, the dance we never had, the moment I never gave you to walk me down the aisle. It's gone forever, and it's my fault. We sat in silence for a long moment, the cafe noise washing around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the clink of cups and saucers. Finally, I spoke. Why now, Sarah? Why 6 months later? Why not 1 month after the trial? Or 3 months? Or a year? She considered the question carefully. Because I had to hit bottom first. I had to lose everything: the apartment, the marriage, the illusion that I was the victim in this story. I had to work those 2 jobs and come home to an empty studio and eat ramen for dinner and realize that this is what you were trying to save me from. Not poverty, but entitlement. Not struggle, but the inability to struggle. Go on, I said. Dr. Richardson asked me to make a list of everything you'd done for me. Not just the money, but everything. It took me 3 weeks to write it all down. 27 pages, Dad. 27 pages of memories. You teaching me to swim. You staying up all night when I had the flu. You learning how to braid hair from YouTube videos because Mom wasn't there to teach you. You attending every school play, even when I only had 2 lines. You working overtime to afford my prom dress. You co-signing my first apartment lease. You believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Her voice broke, and then I made another list. Everything I'd done for you in the past 3 years. That list took 10 minutes. Birthday cards I'd sent. Christmas gifts I'd bought with your money. Mandatory holiday visits where I couldn't wait to leave. That's what our relationship had become. 27 pages versus 10 minutes. I felt tears prick my own eyes, but held them back. What do you want from me, Sarah? Really? I want, she said slowly, a chance to write a new list. Not now, not rushed, but over time. I want to earn my way back into your life, if you'll let me. Not as your dependent, but as your daughter. Not as someone who needs your money, but as someone who needs her father. That's a big ask, I said honestly. I know. And if you say no, I'll understand. I'll leave this cafe, and I'll continue working on myself, and I'll live with the consequences of my choices. But Dad, if there's even a small part of you that wants to try, I'm asking for that chance. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Not the entitled woman who'd excluded me from her wedding, but the broken, humbled person sitting across from me now. I saw exhaustion in her eyes, but also something else, clarity. The kind that only comes from falling hard and choosing to get back up. I need time, I said finally. Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. How much time? I don't know. These wounds don't heal on a schedule, Sarah. You spent 3 years teaching me I didn't matter. I can't undo that learning in a single conversation, no matter how honest. Fair enough, she whispered. Can I write to you? Not asking for anything, just letting you know how I'm doing. I considered it. Once a month, no more. And I'll respond when I'm ready, if I'm ready. Thank you, she said, fresh tears falling. That's more than I deserve. Probably, I agreed. But maybe that's what grace is, giving more than someone deserves, because you remember who they used to be and who they might become again. True to her word, Sarah wrote once a month. The letters arrived like clockwork, always handwritten, always honest. Month 2, got promoted to full-time receptionist. I cried when they told me, not because of the raise, but because someone believed in me based on my work, not my relationship to someone else. Month 3, ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He asked if I'd talk to you, if you might be willing to help with his rent. I said no, you weren't his bank account anymore. He called me a bitter bitch. I called it growth. Month 4, learned to cook. Made your pot roast recipe from memory. Burned it the first time, but got it right the second. Sat alone in my studio eating it and remembering Sunday dinners when mom was alive. Month 5, Dr. Richardson asked if I'd forgiven myself yet. I said no. She said good real forgiveness takes time. Instant forgiveness is just another form of denial. I didn't respond to any of them, but I read each one multiple times. I kept them in a drawer in my desk, a growing stack of pages that charted someone's journey back to themselves. Tom, my neighbor, noticed the letters. You going to answer her eventually? He asked one evening over chess. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to. Part of me is terrified that if I let her back in, I'll fall into the same patterns. That I'll start trying to fix her problems, that she'll start depending on me, that we'll end up right back where we were. You're not the same man you were 6 months ago, Tom observed, moving his knight. And from what you've told me, she's not the same woman either. Maybe that's the point, you both had to break completely to build something new. Month 6 brought a phone call instead of a letter. It was 2 a.m. I answered groggily, my heart already racing. Dad. Sarah's voice was small, frightened. I'm so sorry to call. I know I said I'd only write, but I didn't know who else. What's wrong? I sat up, suddenly wide awake. I'm at county hospital. I'm okay, she added quickly. But I was in a car accident. Someone ran a red light. My car's totaled and I have a concussion and they want to keep me overnight for observation, but I don't have anyone to. I'm on my way, I said, already reaching for my pants. Which room? Dad, you don't have to. Which room, Sarah? 314. But really, I can. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't move. I made it in 15. When I walked into her room, Sarah was sitting on the hospital bed, a bandage on her forehead, her arm in a sling. She looked impossibly young and impossibly vulnerable. Dad, she said, starting to cry the moment she saw me. I'm sorry. I know you need space. I know I don't have the right to call you for help, but I was so scared and alone, and you were the only person I wanted. I crossed the room and pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of her injuries. You're my daughter, I said simply. When you're scared and hurt, I'm here. That's not negotiable. She sobbed into my shoulder the way she had when she was little and had scraped her knee, or when a friend had been mean to her, or when her mother had first gotten sick. I held her and let her cry and realized something fundamental. I could establish boundaries and still show up in an emergency. I could protect myself and still be her father. When she finally pulled back, I handed her a tissue from the bedside table. Tell me what happened. She explained about the accident, about the drunk driver who'd run the light, about the airbag that had probably saved her life. My car is completely destroyed, she said, and I don't have insurance to cover a rental. I've been taking the bus for a while to save money. I saw the fear in her eyes, not fear that I wouldn't help, but fear that she might have to ask. We'll figure it out, I said. Tomorrow, when you're released. Tonight, you just rest. Dad, I can't ask you for. You're not asking, I interrupted gently. And I'm not offering to solve everything. But we'll figure out what the practical next steps are. Together, as father and daughter, not as ATM and dependent. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. I don't deserve you. Probably not, I agreed with a slight smile. But life isn't about getting what we deserve. It's about what we do with what we're given. I stayed all night, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair by her bed. Every time she woke up confused from the concussion, I was there to remind her where she was and that she was safe. In the morning, after the doctor cleared her for discharge, we went to a diner near the hospital. Sarah moved slowly, wincing with every step, but she'd refused the wheelchair. Too stubborn for your own good, I observed. You get that from me. Among other things, she said with a slight smile. Over breakfast, eggs and toast for her, coffee and pancakes for me, we had the conversation we'd both been avoiding. I need to figure out transportation for work, Sarah said, staring at her eggs. I can take the bus, but it adds 2 hours to my commute each way. I'll make it work, How much do you have in savings? I asked. She looked surprised by the direct question. About $1,200. I've been trying to build an emergency fund like you always told me to. And how much would a reliable used car cost? Maybe $3,000 for something that won't break down immediately. But Dad, I'm not asking. I know you're not, I said. I'm asking. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll loan you $2,000. Not give loan. You'll pay me back $100 a month for 20 months. We'll draw up a contract. If you miss a payment, we'll talk about why, but there will be consequences. This isn't me fixing your problem. It's me helping you fix your own problem. Do you see the difference? Sarah sat very still, processing. You're teaching me about accountability. I'm teaching you that help and enabling are two different things. If I just bought you a car, I'd be telling you that you don't have to face consequences. By loaning you money with clear terms, I'm saying I believe you can handle adult responsibility. What if I can't pay you back? Then we'll have a hard conversation about what that means. But Sarah, I don't think you'll fail. You've been paying your own rent for 6 months. You've held down 2 jobs. You've done the work in therapy. You're not the same person who took my money for granted. She wiped her eyes with her napkin. I'll pay you back. Every cent. Even if I have to pick up a 3rd job. One step at a time, I said. First, let's get you home so you can rest. Then tomorrow we'll go look at cars together. I know a mechanic who can check them out before you buy. Together? She asked hesitantly. Together, I confirmed. That's what fathers and daughters do. They help each other. Not by solving every problem, but by showing up. Over the next 3 months, Sarah and I slowly rebuilt something new. Not the old relationship that was dead and buried, but something different, something healthier. We met for coffee every other week. Sometimes we talked about deep things, her therapy, my travels, the wounds we were both still healing. Sometimes we talked about nothing, the weather, a funny thing that happened at work, a movie one of us had seen. She paid her car loan installments on the 1st of every month, always on time. The 3rd month, she paid $150 instead of $100. I got a raise, she explained when I questioned the extra. And I want to pay you back faster. Not because I feel guilty, not only because of that, but because I'm proud of being able to. I'm proud of you too, I said, and watched her face light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Small moments built into bigger ones. She started calling every Sunday morning, not to ask for anything, just to check in. How was your week? She'd ask. Did you finish that painting you were working on? Did you hear from Uncle Daniel? For the first time in 3 years, she asked about my life with genuine interest. One Sunday, she asked if she could come see my condo. I've never seen where you live now, she said. I'd like to, if that's okay. When she arrived, she walked through slowly, taking in the artwork on the walls, the books on the shelves, the photos of places I'd traveled. "Dad, this is beautiful," she said, standing by the window looking out at the harbor. "You've built such a peaceful life." "I had to," I said. "After everything fell apart, I needed to remember who I was before I became someone's ATM." She flinched slightly at the words, but nodded. "I'm glad you did. You deserve peace." We made dinner together that night, my mother's old pasta recipe. Sarah chopped vegetables while I boiled water, and we fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side in comfortable silence. "I miss this," she said quietly. "Not the money, not the apartment you paid for. Just this, cooking with you, being with you without wanting something." "I miss it too," I admitted. The apology she owed herself. 8 months after the coffee shop reunion, Sarah called and asked if we could meet somewhere specific, the church where her mother's funeral had been held. "Why there?" I asked, curious and a little concerned. "There's something I need to do," she said, "and I need you there. Please." We met on a Thursday afternoon. The church was empty except for us, the stained glass windows casting colored patterns on the wooden pews. Sarah led me to the front row, where we'd sat during her mother's service. She sat down and I sat beside her, waiting. "When Mom died," Sarah began, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space, "I was 17, and I remember you telling me that Mom would want us to take care of each other, that we were all we had left." I nodded, remembering that awful day. "I promised you then that I would. I promised Mom, in my head, that I'd be there for you the way she couldn't be anymore. And Dad, I broke that promise. Spectacularly." She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her purse. "I wrote this for her. An apology I needed to say out loud, in the place where we said goodbye to her." "Sarah, you don't have to." "I do," she said firmly. "Please." She unfolded the paper with shaking hands and read. "Mom, I'm sorry I became someone you wouldn't recognize. Sorry I treated Dad like he was disposable. Sorry I forgot every lesson you taught me about kindness and gratitude and family. You died trying to teach me to be strong and independent, and I became weak and entitled instead. I'm sorry that when Dad needed support after losing you, I took from him instead of giving. I'm sorry I treated your memory like it was worth less than designer purses and expensive dinners. But Mom, I want you to know I'm trying. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm learning to stand on my own. I'm becoming someone who might make you proud again. And I'm trying to rebuild what I broke with Dad, not the old version, but something better. I can't promise I'll never mess up again, but I promise I'm trying. And I hope, wherever you are, you can see that I'm finally growing into the daughter you hoped I'd be." By the time she finished, both of us were crying. "Your mother would be proud of who you're becoming," I said softly. "I am too." Sarah folded the letter carefully and stood. She walked to the altar, where a small memorial candle burned perpetually, and placed the letter beside it. "I needed to say that here," she explained, returning to sit beside me, "in the place where we said goodbye to her. Because I think part of me has been running from her memory, from the guilt of knowing she'd be disappointed in me." "She'd forgive you," I said. "That's what parents do. We watch our children fail and learn and grow, and we love them through all of it, even after everything I did. Even then." We sat together in silence for a long time, in that space where we'd once grieved together and were now, somehow, healing together. 3 months later, on a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Marcus stood there. He looked different, thinner, tired, wearing clothes that had seen better days. "David," he said, his voice uncertain, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I was wondering if we could talk." Every instinct told me to slam the door. This was the man who'd helped drain my savings, who'd plotted to have me declared incompetent, who'd treated me like a resource to be exploited. But something in his eyes stopped me, not the old manipulation, but something that looked like genuine defeat. "You have 5 minutes, I said, not inviting him in. He nodded, understanding he hadn't earned entrance to my home. "I'll be quick. I came to apologize. Not because Sarah told me to. She doesn't even know I'm here. but because I need to say this for me, to live with myself. Go on. I treated you terribly. I helped convince Sarah that you owed us. I pushed for the legal action. I said horrible things about you, to you, and behind your back. And the truth is, I did all of that because seeing you be generous made me feel inadequate. You were the father I never had, and instead of appreciating that, I resented you for it. I studied him carefully, looking for the lie, the angle. What do you want, Marcus? Nothing, he said, and I almost believed him. I'm not asking for money or help or even forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I know what I did, that I'm ashamed of it, and that you were right about everything about me, about us, about the life we were living. How are you doing? I asked, surprising myself. Struggling, he admitted. Working construction, living in a room I rent by the week, learning what real work feels like. It's hard, but it's honest. And I'm starting to understand why you cut us off. You weren't punishing us, you were trying to save us from ourselves. Better late than never, I said dryly. Yeah. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Sarah's doing well, in case you're wondering. She talks about you sometimes, carefully, like she's afraid of jinxing something fragile. She said you two are rebuilding. I'm glad. She needs her father. Anything else? Just, thank you, for being the kind of man who showed me what I wasn't. I'm trying to become better. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. I nodded slowly. That's all any of us can do. He turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing, I'm sorry about the wedding. That was cruel, and it was mostly my family's influence, but I went along with it. If I could take back one thing, it would be that. You deserve to walk your daughter down the aisle. After he left, I stood in my doorway for a long time, processing. Tom came out of his condo, saw my expression. You okay? He asked. Marcus was just here. What did he want? To apologize. Did you accept? I thought about it. I don't know. But I didn't slam the door in his face, so maybe that's a start. 1 year after the coffee shop reunion, Sarah called with a trembling voice. Dad, I have something to ask you, and please don't feel obligated to say yes. If it's too much, I completely understand. Sarah breathed. What is it? I'm getting a do-over. A wedding do-over. I was confused. What do you mean? Marcus and I aren't getting back together, that's done. But I realized I never had the wedding I actually wanted. I had the wedding that was about impressing his family and hiding our financial dysfunction. So I'm throwing myself a different kind of celebration. Not a wedding, but like a commitment ceremony to myself, to the life I'm building, the person I'm becoming. She took a breath. It's small, just a few close friends, my therapist, some coworkers. Very simple, in a park. But Dad, I'd really like you there. Not to walk me down an aisle, there is no aisle, but to just be there, as my father, as the person who never gave up on me even when I gave him every reason to. My throat tightened when, next month, the 14th, at Harbor Park, 3 p.m. But Dad, seriously, if this is too much, I'll be there, I said. Really? Really? What should I bring? Just yourself. That's all I've ever really needed. The day arrived warm and clear. I wore the suit I'd bought for the wedding I never attended, not as a reminder of pain, but as a symbol of reclamation. The gathering was exactly as Sarah described: small, intimate, honest. A circle of chairs on the grass, a simple arch decorated with wildflowers, maybe 20 people total. When Sarah saw me arrive, she broke into the biggest smile I'd seen in years. She was wearing a simple white sundress, her hair loose, no expensive styling or designer labels. She looked beautiful. She looked like herself. You came, she said, hugging me tight. I said I would. I know, but I was still afraid you might change your mind. The ceremony was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Sarah stood in the center of the circle and spoke. A year ago, I was a different person. A person I'm not proud of. A person who hurt the people who loved her most, especially my father. Today isn't about apologizing again, I've done that. Today is about commitment. I'm committing to being someone worthy of love. Someone who gives as much as she takes. Someone who shows up. Someone my mother would be proud of. and someone my father can trust again. She turned to me. Dad, would you come here? I stood and walked to the center, my heart pounding. Sarah took my hands. When I was little, you taught me that promises matter, that showing up matters, that love is a verb. And for a long time, I forgot all of that. But you didn't. Even when I treated you like you were invisible, you kept loving me in the only way a parent can from a distance, when closeness was too painful. I can't undo the choices I made, but I can make new ones. And today, the choice I'm making is to honor the man who raised me, the man who taught me what strength really looks like, the man who showed me that boundaries are a form of love too. She squeezed my hands tightly. Dad, would you give me a blessing? Not a wedding blessing, a life blessing, something to mark this new beginning. For a moment, the words wouldn't come. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because everything I wanted to say was finally possible again. I cleared my throat. Sarah, I bless you with courage, because you've shown more of it this past year than most people show in a lifetime. I bless you with clarity, the kind that keeps you honest with yourself. And I bless you with peace, the peace that comes from knowing you faced who you were and chose to become someone better. And I bless us, my voice cracked, just a little, with the chance to build something new, something honest, something we can both be proud of. Sarah stepped forward and hugged me tight, trembling, whole. And for the first time in years, I hugged her without holding back. Around us, her little circle of friends clapped softly, respectfully. It wasn't applause for a performance. It was acknowledgement of a journey, hers, mine, ours. The sun dipped lower over the harbor as guests drifted away. Sarah and I sat on a bench overlooking the water, a gentle breeze brushing past us. A year ago, this would have felt impossible. Now it felt earned. You know what I'm most scared of? She asked softly. Tell me. That I'll mess up again. You will, I said honestly. We both will. She looked at me, startled. And when we do, I continued, we'll talk about it. We'll work through it. That's what a real relationship is, two imperfect people choosing to show up anyway. She leaned her head on my shoulder the way she had when she was a child. Thank you for not giving up on me. I didn't, I said, but I did step back. And that's what gave both of us a chance to grow. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. This is for you, she said. Don't worry, it's not a letter asking for money. I opened it carefully. Inside was a receipt, her final car loan payment, paid in full. I saved up, she said proudly. I wanted to finish early. I wanted to prove to myself, not you, that I could follow through. I felt something warm settle in my chest. Pride. Real, unforced, clean pride. You did good, kid, I said, my voice a little rough. Her smile was radiant. Thanks, Dad. 1 year later, our Sunday breakfast became a tradition, one we both enjoyed, not endured. Sometimes we cooked at my place. Sometimes we tried new little diners around town. Sarah was promoted again at work. She kept going to therapy. She built savings. She started taking night classes in bookkeeping. But the biggest change wasn't in her resume. It was in the way she listened, the way she showed up, the way she asked about my life, not out of obligation, but genuine interest. One Sunday morning, she arrived with a framed photo in her hands. I made something, she said shyly. Inside the frame were 2 lists. The 27-page list of everything I'd done for her growing up, summarized into 10 simple lines of gratitude. And next to it, a growing list she'd started this past year, things she had done for us. Moments of connection, honesty, effort, repair. I want to keep adding to the right side, she said. We both will, I replied. She hung it on the wall in my hallway, right between a photo of her mother and a watercolor painting I'd made of the harbor. Not the fairy tale kind, not the movie kind, the real kind, the kind built slowly, deliberately, honestly. A year after her ceremony, Sarah invited me over for dinner at her new apartment, a small, modest 1-bedroom she paid for entirely on her own. She'd cooked pot roast, my recipe, perfectly. As we ate, she raised her glass of sparkling water. To us, she said. To second chances, I answered. No, she corrected gently. To earn chances. I clinked my glass against hers. She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes, that carried hard-won peace. And in that small kitchen, with the scent of pot roast in the air and the sound of boats in the distance, I realized something. We didn't just rebuild our relationship. We built something better than what we had before. Something honest, mutual, balanced, and alive. Something real. A happy ending. Not because everything was perfect, but because we finally were. A year passed, and with it, the awkwardness of rebuilding faded into something natural. Sarah's apartment was a quiet reflection of her new life, a space filled with books she'd started reading again, plants she'd tended with care, and a framed photograph of her standing beside me on the pier, smiling wide, no longer pretending. She kept working 2 jobs, but now they were different. She'd earned a full-time position as an office manager at a local law firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Her paycheck felt real, a testament to her persistence, not the remnants of someone else's generosity. Her nights were spent studying for her bookkeeping certification. I might even take on a couple clients in a few years, she said one night, over a simple dinner. But no promises, just one step at a time. Her relationships had changed too. The ex-boyfriends, the empty friendships that once flourished on pretense, those were gone. She was still close with a few old friends, but now her circle was made up of people who saw her for who she really was, not who she used to be, not who they wanted her to be. Sarah had learned that love, the way she'd craved it, came in small, everyday gestures. The way her friend Miriam showed up for her last-minute study session, or how she called her therapist to check in when things got tough. It wasn't grand gestures. It was consistency, and it was real. My reflection. As for me, I had become something I didn't recognize at first. A man with a quiet peace, not hollowed out by past wounds, but filled with a kind of gentleness I had lost somewhere along the way. I'd taken up painting again small landscapes, mostly quiet scenes of the harbor, the light at dawn, the sky that held more promise than I'd once believed. They were nothing special, but they felt like me. And I had begun to believe that who I was, on my own, was enough. Not just a father, not just someone's provider, but a man, still learning, still growing, who could stand tall even when his family was no longer dependent on him. I had new boundaries, new habits, nothing extreme, nothing drastic, just small, deliberate choices that allowed me to live on my terms. I met Tom for chess every week, and I traveled when I wanted to. I learned how to cook pasta without rushing, savoring the time spent over a hot stove, letting my thoughts simmer just as long. And when Sarah called, I didn't flinch at the sound of her voice. "Dad, you got a minute?" she'd ask. "Always," I'd say. Sarah's letter. 6 months after the last time Sarah and I had sat together at Harbor Park, I received a letter in the mail, a simple, handwritten note. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. "Dear Dad, I don't need anything from you today. I just want you to know how much I've grown and that I'm still growing. Thank you for showing me what it looks like to be a real man, a real father. You're a good man, Dad, and I love you. Sarah." I read it twice, then tucked it away in the drawer where I kept the letters she'd written me in the past. They were part of a new chapter, one where we gave each other space, respect, and love without expectations, without agendas. The old, broken version of us was gone, but in its place was something far more enduring. Years from that moment, when Sarah stood at the altar empty, no aisle, no grand declarations, she'd find herself, once again, standing beside the people who truly mattered, no longer apologizing for who she was, no longer pretending to be something she wasn't, just there, living in the moment, with no need to explain or justify herself. And as for me, I was just grateful to be there, the way she once needed me to be, the way I now needed her to be. We hadn't saved each other, not in any dramatic, cinematic way, but in the quiet, patient ways we had chosen each other back, piece by piece, over time. And that was the kind of love that endured. And in that moment, Sarah called. as she did every Sunday. We'd learned to share our lives slowly, gradually, without urgency. "Hey, Dad. Just checking in. How's the painting going?" I smiled, setting down my brush. "Getting better every day?" I said. "How's your bookkeeping course?" "Almost done. I'm proud of this one. But I think I've finally learned the most important lesson." "And what's that?" I asked, my voice soft. "That no matter how much I achieve or don't achieve, I'm still enough." I didn't answer right away, but the smile on my face felt like the answer. I was enough, too. And maybe that's what healing looked like. Not in perfection, but in the recognition of ourselves. In the peace of knowing we were, finally, exactly where we were meant to be. Some nights, looking at the city lights from my balcony, I think about the man I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That man is gone. In his place is someone who has understood a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is David. I'm 69 years old, and I've finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. If you've lived through something similar, know this: you're not alone. Your worth isn't measured by what you give others. It's inherent in who you are. It's never too late to reclaim your dignity. It's never too late to say no. It's never too late to choose yourself. This is the ending, not the end of the story, but the beginning of something else. Something lasting. Something real. What would you do in this situation? Have you ever felt taken for granted by family? Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters, because others need to hear they're not alone. If any story stirred your soil, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so the porch light stays on. Thank you for listening to my stories. See you in the next story, and bring your own light.